Welcome to another lore video. There's not been too much in the way of story-based news. There's one piece of news that could lead to a future development. Otherwise, not really a lot going on. There has been a major development in the war, which I'll get to after a brief roundup of what story we have. So let's start with the one most likely to move the war on a bit. Two community goals started this week, both of them for Ramtar. Now he believes he can do something or other with Guardian technology to do something or other to the Titans. And he wants both Guardian relics and agrelics, the relics you can make unclassified after putting 3 of them in a Thargoid machine at one of their ancient sites, which also turns them from blue to green. Both goals only need to reach tier 1 for him to start building his prototypes of whatever it is. And there are some nice paint jobs for the Corvette, Cutter and Chieftain if you want to try for those. He believes he can use Guardian technology to affect the Titans in some way. This has led to a bit of speculation from players along the Salvation lines saying things like, yes, because putting Guardian and Thargoid technology together worked so well last time. But actually nowhere in the article does Ramtar say anything about putting those technologies together, only about using Guardian technology to affect a Titan in a so far unspecified way. So for me, jumping to that conclusion is premature. Doesn't mean it couldn't be true, but there's no reason to automatically go there, or even to believe that he would be another Salvation. Allow people to learn from the mistakes of others. A second unspoken assumption is in there as well, that it must be some kind of weapon, because he could only make the same mistake as Salvation if it was some kind of weapon that backfired or got taken over and fired back at him. Again, nothing in the article suggests it's a weapon. It could be a protective module for Guardian weapons and modules, so that you could use them in Titan systems, and perhaps even stop Orthrus's and glaive attacks as well. Let's see what it is first before jumping to conclusions. The article talks about it possibly winning the war, but that would be a bit lame if we suddenly killed the Titans or drove them away and that was that. Just clean up the systems left behind, which would perhaps be weakened without Titan support. I think this is unlikely. It may end this stage of the war, but the whole war? That would be a bit abrupt. Like a TV series that runs for dozens of episodes where it builds up the story and then they wrap it up in the last 10 minutes. I think that would be very unsatisfying. And it could be why people think something's going to go wrong, because the idea of the war just ending like that seems extremely unlikely and it would be a bit rubbish. But I still don't think that this is going to happen through any kind of Salvation type hubris on Ramtar's part. Another reason I don't personally believe it'll go that way is because I think the reason Frontier are so cagey about these storylines is that they're painfully aware of being obvious or giving things away. And for Ramtar to be Salvation Mark II is just way too obvious. Time will tell. And, you know, any of this speculation can always be wrong, because it is just speculation at this point. But there's one thought that occurs to me. The relics are actually Guardian computers. It's in their description, in the Guardian Codex for them. They're described as part power source, part computer, part key. Imagine if Salvation was hiding in one of them and somebody handed him in to Ramtar. The Empire, like the Federation, is doubling down on the continued isolation of the Thargoid abductees. Any sympathy they may have had for their own citizens lasted about 5 minutes before they began thinking of them as alien infections and security risks. Which is a bit rich coming from them, because their biggest security risk is their own apathy towards the actual Thargoids. Not people who might be working for them, not people who might be collaborating with them, not people who could have been affected by them, but, you know, the ones out there taking over systems at a rate of knots. Them. I don't know. The Thargoids have been around for millions of years. They've seen civilizations come and go. They've fought enemies both ancient and terrible, but now they are facing the biggest and most terrifying foe of all. Bureaucracy. Orisa clearly thinks this is all fine, and while she was good enough to tell those that wanted to euthanize the refugees that that was going too far, she also put down Aisling, telling her not to worry a pretty little head about it and get back to Aegis. This arrogant belief that they can just sit there and ignore the war, it has to lead to some kind of comeuppance sooner or later, one would have thought. Zemina Torval has returned to the Senate and clearly intends to spend her twilight years back in politics. Although this has only just come to light, when she first cut her ties with her corporate allies, it was speculated that she was only interested in leaving something for her descendants. No other aim or goal was suggested at the time. Throughout all the trouble with rival corporation Kane Massey, including the assassination of their CEO, for which she got blamed and then cleared, her only aim seemed to be to consolidate her business interests so that everything was under her control, no partnerships, nobody else to interfere in the decision-making process, and then passing it on to her daughter Constantia, which she's now done. No mention was ever made about what she herself was going to do after handing over the reins, and now we know. She feels she has years left in her at the tender age of 132 and wants to get back to her government duties. It's only now that one possible reason and explanation has come to light for why she isn't just retiring. Because Chancellor Blaine is retiring soon. His seat will be vacant and she has deputised for him before. Was this all in order to be able to focus on acquiring the most powerful seat in the Senate without having business niggles as a distraction? It very much looks like it. Chancellor Blaine, if you recall, was the one who covered up the fact that the Emperor had been kidnapped and spent a year denying it and pretending she was in protective and very secret custody. So secret, apparently, that even he didn't know where she was. With the federal elections and Zemina returning to the Senate with the potential to be Chancellor, I've speculated in the past that although these events just seem to be much of a muchness at the moment, maybe they're leading into some kind of power play revamp. You'd have thought that Zemina Torval, in the most powerful seat in the Senate, would have the potential to jump up the power play ranks. Now, we've all been hoping for a revamp of power play for a long, long time, and it would be nice to think that these stories were hinting at that. But, as always, all we can do is wait and see, and keep our fingers crossed. The only other real news at the moment is about the alliance and Sirius, where the bickering continues, but not a lot else. President Mahon's opposite number, Nakato Kane, her recent community goal to prove the alliance could survive without Sirius failed, and now she's dragged Lee Yong-rui, CEO of Sirius, into yet another inquiry, to which he's responded, quite obviously, by saying that her own failure to secure help means that she needs Sirius more than she cares to admit. And so on it goes, and on it goes, with neither side contributing anything new at the moment, either to the story or to the war effort. On to the war, and in the last couple of videos I said that although the increase to sampling was tough, it wasn't insurmountable, especially if we could get a few people to help. And had that been all there was to it, that might have been the case. Even with the number of alerts produced by the Titans each week rising from 5 to 6, it didn't seem out of reach to me. Unfortunately, along with the Titans themselves being able to cause alerts, that didn't bother me too much because I thought as long as we could clear the other controls, we could get to those or otherwise keep them contained. But sadly by then, that and the sampling increase had already demoralised other pilots that were involved in the war. So right up front, I'm going to say right here, right now, that it gives me no pleasure at all to say any of this. And in fact, this is probably the hardest video I've ever had to make. So I'm just going to state the situation and what the effects of it had been, put aside any personal feelings and present the facts as they currently stand. It's impossible not to judge the situation or not to have an opinion about it, but it is possible to point out what's gone wrong without being judgmental, and that's my intention here. Many players had already decided before and over Christmas that they weren't going to bother trying to do well if Frontier were just going to smack them down for it, which I didn't find out until after my last video, so up until then I was still optimistic that we could overcome this latest setback if we just got a few more people. But what was already a large increase on the face of it is actually huge in practice because of how it gets played out and multiplied across 300 systems, and the knock-on effects have been devastating. But it's not just about the numbers. If you've been following me, you'll have often heard me say that the consequences of an event are always more important than the event itself, because events are just events. As soon as they've happened, they're over. But the consequences, what those events were designed to achieve, their objectives, and what happens as a result, the lasting effects of them are what really matter, and this is no exception. If you look no further than taking the action at face value and ignore those consequences, you won't understand why this has been so devastating for the player base. An already demoralised player base was further demoralised on Thursday, January the 10th, when they increased the weekly alerts generated by Titans from 6 to 8. And that was the last straw. The main problem in an unpopulated alert is the lack of activities that work well there. There are obviously no rescues, no deliveries, and no AX reactivations to do, so your options are limited. AX is pretty sparse, with mostly only scouts to kill, and or thrisses if you can find them, with the occasional interceptor turning up, but killing them is very slow to move the progress bar, and they only appear in signal sources, which can be few and far between. Same goes for salvage. Hundreds of rescued escape pods and black boxes do very little for war progress, and all of these activities are extremely time consuming. At that speed, we would be lucky to clear 2 or 3 systems a week, and while we were doing those, no other systems would be getting worked on, which wouldn't get us very far. We never expected tissue sampling to be so good, and it came as a big surprise to all of us when we discovered how good it was. We'd much prefer it if other activities were more effective, because even with the increase, sampling is still the fastest way to clear alerts and controls. For a while, I did wonder if it was some way of hinting that this war would be different and not won by fighting, or at least not only by fighting, or mainly by fighting. And that is still an interesting idea to explore and speculate about, but not like this. With actual combat worth so little that Top Gun AX squads like our friends in Vang, who kill Hydras over their morning coffee, or possibly with their morning coffee, it's a bit ridiculous to see them wiping out conflict zone after conflict zone and barely moving the progress bar. For conflict and war and fighting to be worth so actually little in a war, without any real good story reason given for it, it's an interesting idea, but in practice all it means is the AX pilots are knocking their pipes out and getting nowhere fast. I don't know. With the sampling increase, it's no longer possible to clear all of the alerts in a week, with the small number of people doing it. Any unpopulated alert that isn't cleared in a week becomes a new controlled system. An unpopulated alert at 20 light years used to take 350 samples to clear. Now it takes 1,000, going to 2,000 at 17.5 light years and 3,000 at 15 light years from the Maelstrom. 20 or 30 of those every week, with only 1 week to clear them. And you can see why most of them are becoming controls. And on top of that, you've still got populated alerts, any invasions that occur, and all the controls. It's simply too much. So since the increase, we've got 20 new control systems being gifted to the Thargoids every week, because we can't stop them. Those who were sampling in controls, like Alex and their crew, stopped before Christmas and currently have no incentive to start again. And it's coordinated efforts that have taken the biggest blow of all. At this point, even if we bust a gut trying to clear only the unpopulated alerts, it will make no difference if nobody's clearing the controls that cause them. They'll just get re-alerted again and again forever, until those underlying controls are cleared as well. It's left us all in limbo, wondering why we should bother with no motivation to play constant whack-a-mole. This was so clumsy. All it's done is make everyone think it's too much hassle. Everybody's sitting around waiting to see if others are still doing their bit before deciding if they will, and it's completely paralysed all coordinated efforts. With the enemy gaining 20 new control systems a week again, it's almost undone a whole year's work, swept away nearly all of our effort and progress so far, and virtually put us back to last January, when they were also taking 20 or more systems a week with no way to stop them. There may be a lot of people still playing Elite, but there are not that many invested long term in the war. Most of them dip in occasionally, but only a few of us are part of any coordinated effort, day in and day out, to clear enemy territory or follow any kind of greater plan. And without more people doing that, those that are doing it have now been overwhelmed with more work than they can humanly cope with. It's as simple as that. I'm sure that the trolls and the argumentative types will say that we're just whining about things being too hard, but we're not. We've never been afraid of things being difficult. We've never been afraid of hard work. We've never been afraid of getting stuck in and being hands-on. And we've always been happy to rise to the challenge. But when they make it humanly impossible, it's not whining to point out the difference between difficult and impossible. It's just a fact. This is a crudely implemented, disproportionate and reactionary response to our progress. If they didn't want us getting to this stage yet, there were more intelligent ways to slow us down than just slamming a door in our faces a month before Christmas. There's no story reason for it. There's no justification being given for it either. It just looks like a knee-jerk reaction to Tyrannus and then Legong being cleared. And although Tyrannus being cleared got a mention in Galnet, this move comes across as being completely surprised by it. And everything since is a panicky overreaction, especially the double whammy of increasing the alerts twice. I don't think they realise how much damage they've done. And ironically, it wasn't even necessary. Even if things had stayed the same, it would have taken another year to clear 3 more Titans. There'd still be 3 left after 2 years. Meanwhile, they've undone almost a whole year's work. Nobody trusts them to play fair anymore, and of course, nobody likes a cheat. As I say, it makes me very sad to say this, it really does, but they've taken all the good things about the war, groups working together for the first time, the camaraderie that's grown between pilots from all areas, the coming together against a common enemy and fighting for the common cause, and destroyed all that goodwill and hard work overnight. They might not have meant to, and I'm pretty sure they didn't intend to, but what they've done is made our efforts feel useless and made us feel worthless. People are just fed up of heavy-handed knockbacks like this. And the problem is now that if they do give us a break, a lot of people won't trust them not to smack us down again if we start doing too well again, because that trust is gone, the damage is done. They've really shot themselves in the foot this time and pushed the players too far. I don't want to be that person who belittles Frontier all the time. I don't like people who do that. I don't like people who take lazy cheap shots at everybody else. So I'm not here to do that. That's not what my video series is about. And it's not what I'm about. I always want to be as fair as I can to people. And I do everything in my power to give people the benefit of the doubt. And see as many sides of the story as possible. Until, of course, someone abuses that courtesy or abuses me and prove by themselves that they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt. But with the best will in the world, sometimes Frontier really do ask for the frequent accusations that they don't play their own game or read their own forum. Since the war started, there's been a long-running sticky thread on the official forum where players have been discussing all of their plans in detail. So what we were doing should have come as no surprise. For months, all the details of Operation Redacted to find out if a Titan could cause alerts, and then Operation Deleted to clear Tyrannus, all of those plans have been laid out in that thread. What we were doing, why, which groups were involved, even the carriers we were using and where they were parked. It was all in there, chapter and verse, all spelled out for anyone to read. All anyone from Frontier had to do was spend about 10 minutes a day reading any new entries and taking a few notes to know exactly what we were up to. But instead, they appear to have acted all shocked about us clearing 2 Titans and just hit us with a reactionary difficulty increase with no apparent regard for the consequences, which sadly only validates those who say they don't read the forum they set up for players to talk to them on. And I also know that they've had redundancies and hard times, so I'm not blaming them for having the same troubles as every other company in the UK at the moment. They're all struggling. But That's the point. It was the wrong time to do it. This has been thrown down with very little understanding of their target audience and what's gone before. So if they haven't had the time to get to grips with our operations, then perhaps that's not the time to make sweeping game changes that haven't really been thought through. They can only ever be wide of the mark. So, here we all sit in limbo, waiting for Frontier to realise just how badly they've messed up. They've destroyed the cooperation and camaraderie players have built up over the last year. They've destroyed player trust because players no longer believe that they have any intention of playing intelligently or fairly. And whether anyone else believes that or not doesn't matter, because what matters is people's perceptions. And it's those perceptions that Frontier will have to overcome. That trust and the desire to participate and carry on participating that goes with it, it's going to be extremely difficult and in some cases may even be impossible to get back. It's a PR disaster at the worst possible time for it, when they need players to be more involved than ever. In amongst all the doom and gloom, are there any positives to be had? Well, yes, you make your own in situations like this, don't you? For us, it's given us a time to look at and study some of the things we haven't had a chance to because we've been solidly working on the war. For instance, we were told months ago that expansions would be aimed more at populated systems, and that didn't seem to happen. In fact, we saw the opposite, with fewer populated alerts and more unpopulated. Perhaps it was hidden or negated at the time by the amount of alerts and controls we were clearing, which were mostly only leaving unpopulated systems to expand into. Perhaps that and a combination of circumstances contributed to us not really seeing this happen and made us wonder if it was really a thing or not. But now the two systems Tyrannus has alerted are both populated and gone to invasion, with operations having ground to a halt, maybe we're seeing this effect now. The debate over whether a Titan always had a chance of causing an alert by itself, or whether that was God-handed after Tyrannus was cleared, is kind of academic now. But this could be an indicator that a populated system will be chosen by preference if there's one in range. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see. Commander Yazvar here at PDES has created a sample calculator for alerts. And I've been bringing our documentation on our Discord up to date, and we've been refining and optimizing our sampling techniques, making small tweaks to our rescue builds, and so on. We've adapted the buddy sampling method created by Commander Mediocre for controls, and we tweaked it a bit for the specialised conditions of an alert. Shout out while I'm here to the Stellar Nebula Project, a German faction. They've been taking care of all the systems in Oya. Big up to them for joining forces on this and trying to help us out until we all realised we needed about 10 times as many people as we had. I've also been having fun doing AX reactivations, and I wish the criteria for them appearing wasn't so narrow. They only appear where the controlling faction has a military settlement within 30 light years or so. And it's a shame we don't get them in more systems than we do, because as well as wishing they did more for war progress, they're a lot of fun. They've changed a bit since the last time I did any as well. The bases are a lot more dangerous than they were even when the Banshee was first added. The detection range of the Banshee seems to have increased, does for me anyway, and now it seems to see me and fire its shutdown missiles at me from up to 5 kilometers out before I get anywhere near the base. And others are managing to sneak in, but I get spotted every time and killed by the Banshee on the open ground on the way in, on foot, with no cover. I don't know if it's luck or a skill issue, but entering by stealth just doesn't seem to work for me anymore. It just means I'm quieter when I get killed. So now I'm using a Crate Mark II with 3 Class 3 Sirius anti-Xeno missiles and 2 Class 2 Azimuth multi-cannons to blow away the Banshee and Revenants, and sometimes even the Scout when it comes to drop more Revenants, then landing and being able to do most of the mission unhindered while the Revenants slowly repopulate. For any Revenants on the ground that might cause me trouble, or it's convenient to get them out of the way so I can reach a building quicker, the Manticore Executioner takes them down in one shot. It's faster and easier to use than the rocket launcher, and it's got more ammunition. The video playing in the background is showing me doing this, and I'm going to post the Mark II build and the mods on the Executioner in the description below. Feel free to mess around with that to your own preference. More shields, more hull, however you want to mess with it. But the AX missiles work great on the Banshee. The multi-cannons don't really do a lot, but if a scout lands, if you're lucky and you're quick, you can blow it away before it drops more revenants, giving yourself a clear base for a few minutes while you run in. And that's about it for this one. I do hope that Frontier will realise sooner rather than later the damage they've done and the monumental effort they'll have to make to gain player trust and interest again. This week the alerts dropped back down to 6 per Titan again, so someone there realised they went too far, at least in that respect, but nothing has changed yet. Nothing else has changed yet anyway, as far as we can tell. So this is not a blame thing. This is not about that. But it has happened. Denying that it's happened is pointless. And what they need to do now is take responsibility for the effect their changes have had on the players and be able to give them assurances that they're going to play fairly from now on and intelligently, and not just throw out sledgehammer changes based on the equivalent of skim reading. And also they're going to have to be ready for those who will be justifiably sceptical of their ability to do this. Stay safe, and as always, thanks for watching. This came out after I'd finished recording for the video. Tom Cool, one of the designers, is leaving, and Tom designed and created the Scorpion SRV, and I actually had the pleasure of meeting him and Sally at LaveCon, and he gave a fascinating talk at LaveCon about how he really put a lot of thought into the design of the Scorpion. You know, he thought long and hard about what the engine was going to sound like and spent a lot of time playing about with just the sound for it, yeah? So with that typical attention to detail that is the hallmark of a good designer, you could see that he really cared about things like that. And I got a bit of a chat with him afterwards, and you know, he couldn't give me any spoilers, obviously, but yeah, very interesting chat. Really nice bloke. Sorry to see him go, and I hope you do well for yourself, Tom. You deserve to, and get yourself something suitable to your talents in a industry that's really tough at the moment. And he's leaving us something which he says is the coolest thing to be put into the game, and that is coming in update 18. I don't know if it's going to be enough to mollify the players who are feeling a bit hard done by at the moment, but I will certainly be looking forward to seeing whatever that is. So thanks for everything, Tom, and good luck in everything you do, mate.